what if we made a game where choice was at the center of the game, where you could get to the end successfully by being ultimately evil or wonderfully good? That would be really unique. That wouldn't be like playing the role of some pre-canned hero. It would be you, a reflection of you. And how fascinating would it be to get to the end of a game and say, gosh, I really didn't realize I'd be that sort of person.
What began as a quirky role-playing game created in part by one of the industry's most notable auteurs would go on to count among Xbox's most important properties. Fable from Lionhead Studios always boasted a certain charm that meshed well with its fascinating characters and awe-inspiring fantastical world. The 2008 sequel Fable 2 arguably represented the series at its best, considering it took home a BAFTA and a slew of well-deserved Game of the Year awards. This momentum wouldn't culminate in similar praise for Fable 3, yet no one could have anticipated the third-number title marking the end of Fable as fans had known it for the better part of a decade. A cutesy beat-em-up in Fable Heroes and Fable the Journey's magic-fueled Kinect adventure trailed far from the franchise's established status quo. But free-to-play game Fable Legends truly subverted expectations, wearing the guise of a big-budget console and PC experience while missing the mark on what made the mainline installments so appealing. In other words, players craved a proper Fable 4, and the team at Lionhead desperately wanted to deliver as much. In fact, studio leads pitched one such project right before Legends started occupying center stage. The proposal didn't receive so much as a passing interest at Microsoft, its gaming vertical preferring to stick the award-winning single-player studio on a multiplayer-only title just as the games-as-a-service craze got underway. This decision begat a host of issues, all of which contributed to Fable Legends' unceremonious cancellation and the untimely closure of the UK development house co-founded by game design luminary Peter Molyneux. This is the tragedy of Fable Legends. This video has been brought to you in part by Dungeon Hunter 6. Dungeon Hunter 6 is the latest free-to-play mobile ARPG in the classic hack-and-slash series. Play as a bounty hunter with diverse classes and enjoy both PvE as well as PvP modes. In Dungeon Hunter 6, you don't just defeat bosses, you make them your allies. Conquer epic bosses and summon up to 3 to join your squad, utilizing their powerful combo skills. But that's not all. Ever wanted to sneak around as a stealthy cat? Dungeon Hunter 6 lets you do just that, inspired by a real cat living with the developers. Explore the customizable mount system, ride fantasy creatures, and join other players. Engage in real-time guild wars, experiment with skill trees, and trade items through the auction system. Don't hesitate. Download Dungeon Hunter 6 for free on Android and iOS using our link, or scan the QR code if you're on PC. Plus, get a special starter pack worth $50 including 10 summoning scrolls, 1 SSR Lieutenant Demonic Wolf, and 1 accessory pack. Adventure awaits. Arm yourself and conquer this world together. Download Dungeon Hunter 6 today and become the ultimate bounty hunter. We'd like to thank Dungeon Hunter 6 for sponsoring this video. Founded in 1997 by Peter Molyneux, Tim Rance, Steve Jackson, and Mark Wembley, Lionhead Studios opened up shop with one mission statement: to develop high-quality games while avoiding the trap of expanding more than necessary. Keeping the company's inner circle small didn't translate to the best management standards, though. Former staffer Charlton Edwards recalled in a Eurogamer interview that Lionhead's early days endured a distinct lack of organization. Yet even without producers and schedules, the make-things-up-as-you-go approach served the team well for the creation of its debut title, Black and White, which Electronic Arts published to great acclaim in 2001. Striking gold on the first try constituted a net good, as the crew grew from a headcount of about 30 to 100 within a year of Black and White's release. Molyneux would call the move a big mistake many years later, considering such expansion the very antithesis of what Lionhead initially aimed to accomplish. Still, it was this rapid growth that engendered Lionhead's attainment of the Fable concept. Prior to Black and White's completion, studio co-founder Steve Jackson spearheaded Lionhead Satellites, a selection of smaller indie outfits cultivated but not owned by Lionhead. Big Blue Box marked one such firm, with two of its co-founders having worked at Molyneux's previous company, Bullfrog Productions, in years past. Upon entering the Lionhead fold, the founders in question, Dean and Simon Carter, brought along the idea that matured into Fable. It didn't take long for the ambitious project to find a permanent home either. Microsoft Game Studios felt the original Xbox needed an RPG, and Fable fit the bill, instantly enthralling the console's co-creator, Ed Fries. From Fries' perspective as a longtime fan, Peter Molyneux's attachment to the project was the biggest draw given his industry cachet. Fries and company also firmly believed the RPG bore the markings of a potential tentpole property, optimism Lionhead fully realized upon releasing the first two Fable entries to critical and commercial success. Between those two success stories, Microsoft acquired the studio in 2006. French publisher Ubisoft reportedly bid on Lionhead as well. Competition Microsoft couldn't abide lest Fable ended up on PlayStation hardware. According to Microsoft Game Studios' former VP and GM, Shane Kim, the acquisition centered wholly on the Microsoft versus Sony war, and not everyone on Lionhead's staff agreed with the decision to sell, though considering the failed releases of Black and White 2 and the movies, many later concluded the buyout kept the developer afloat. But others were pleased with the purchase, finding the first-party status beneficial to Lionhead in the grand scheme. The good times lasted for only so long, evidenced by two inflection points that struck the studio in 2012. Early that year, the developer suffered an event that Peter Molyneux dubbed Black Monday, where veterans disillusioned by the company's direction all resigned on the same day. Interestingly enough, it harkened back to late 2005, amid buyout negotiations with Microsoft, when 4 team members left to establish the eventually Sony-owned Media Molecule. Longtime art director John McCormick counted as one pivotal 2012 departure, resigning in large part because Microsoft rejected a Fable 4 pitch. Peter Molyneux's exit a few months thereafter especially altered the course of Lionhead's future trajectory. Some ex-staffers said he wanted to pursue the free-to-play social game market that had generated riches for the likes of Zynga. Others believed he'd developed a disdain for Fable, frustrated with being unable to ship anything non-Fable related since 2005. Molyneux himself later admitted that other internal projects were higher on his list of priorities by the time Fable 3 entered the picture, and one specific Molyneux-led endeavor may have laid the foundations for what would someday bear the title Fable Legends. John McCormick envisioned Fable 4 as an Unreal Engine 4-powered adventure with an industrial backdrop, one heavily inspired by late Victorian London. The franchise's fantastical elements would have seeped into the historical period in intriguing ways, with one idea depicting Jack the Ripper in the role of a Balverine, the Fable equivalent of a werewolf-like creature. Microsoft turned down the proposal, insisting Lionhead instead steer its focus toward the development of a Fable-branded games-as-a-service title. League of Legends and other popular online-only games at the time had fueled live service mania, fomenting an obsession among publishers eager to create recurring revenue streams. This period was the zeitgeist in which Microsoft reportedly told Lionhead that single-player RPGs and narrative-focused retail games were on their way out. Add that to claims stating the publisher wanted Fable to reach Halo levels of profitability, and it made sense that Lionhead allegedly found itself on the receiving end of an unfavorable ultimatum. Either adapt Fable to the service model or close shop. The beleaguered studio dutifully followed its parent company's lead. Conflicting reports tell different versions of the specifics, but many in the know agree. Fable Legends partly spawned from Project Opal, Peter Molyneux's final venture at the company. A village-building sim, Opal bore all the hallmarks of a project trying to satisfy Microsoft's 3 screens on a cloud strategy. an idea built on the basis that phones, PCs, and televisions should share data and services through cloud storage and network connectivity. Molyneux imagined Project Opal benefiting from cloud-based capabilities, wherein PC versions of the experience housed Opal's Village Builder. The mobile iteration serviced its resource-building functionality, and the Xbox provided a shooter-centric aspect, tying it all together. One former Lionhead developer categorized it along the lines of Assassin's Creed meets Fable meets Minecraft meets SimCity. Whether or not the studio could have ever gotten the ambitious build up and running became a matter of great debate. Either way, in Molyneux's absence, Project Opal was supposedly mined for parts to cobble together the building blocks of Fable Legends. Although other ex-Lionhead staffers once claimed Legends originated from a creative day endeavor known as F-Versus, or as some like to think of it, Fable Team Fortress. Project Opal descendant or not, Microsoft greenlit Fable Legends in 2012 with the understanding that it would launch in the form of a free-to-play service title, information purposefully withheld from the public at the time of its unveiling. As Lionhead Studios entered its so-named 2.0 era without Molyneux leading the charge, the well-established development house suddenly began wading into unfamiliar territory. Unbeknownst to those involved, such a daring enterprise signaled the beginning of the end for the once fabled studio. Unsurprisingly, Lionhead underwent quite a season of change while producing its first post-Molyneux project. The studio culture had to evolve from one centered around an auteur and became more structured in the process. Yet, learning how to build a free-to-play game without past exposure required Herculean effort. Thus, fresh hires joined the crew, including new head of studio John Needham, who'd previously worked on Marvel's Superhero Squad Online, and former mobile game consultant David Eckelberry, who took over as Fable Legends creative director. The outfit eventually narrowed down a core conceit for the would-be online adventure, designing Legends in the style of a 4v1 game, wherein 4 heroes fought off monsters under the thrall of a playable villain. This asymmetrical brawler/RTS hybrid provided the heroes with team-based co-op gameplay and mixed in top-down defense tactics for the lone villain player. But even with Needham and Eckelberry's expertise, Lionhead struggled to break its compelling premise into fun, actionable systems. For example, developers knew Legends demanded a progression system that would feed into an escalating power fantasy. There were disagreements about how said system should function, though, so establishing a few basic rules proved an absolute must. One such rule dictated that levels couldn't sit too high, lest the villain's camera struggle from its bird's-eye perspective. Additional challenges that required roundabout solutions concerned balancing the hero and villain dynamic. Leveling differences between hero and villain characters caused much contention. Same with determining the amount of access heroes should have to health potions under specific circumstances. By the end of 2014, roughly 2 years into development, uncertainty about the game's overall design ethos still lingered, inspiring the hiring of a competitive multiplayer specialist for consultancy purposes. Former developers claimed that while the consultant pinpointed various problem areas and offered insight about possible solutions, their advice ultimately went unheeded. Yet Fable Legends' biggest obstacles stemmed from technical woes that impeded development progress at almost every turn. Unreal Engine 4 powered the title, but Lionhead gained access before the engine's completion, meaning developers were often charged with implementing updated versions of the tools while concurrently designing the game. This start and stop affair added months to the production cycle, a time sink further exacerbated by instances of the engine's revised features and bug fixes introducing previously unseen glitches to the mix. Another manner of technical problem manifested whenever Microsoft used Legends as a guinea pig for its latest initiatives. In January 2015, for instance, the company started building the project as Windows 10 and Xbox One friendly. News dictating that Legends would boast cross-platform play functionality. But since Lionhead entered development with a Steam release in mind, this sudden change in plans opened the gateway to potential cheating issues. Microsoft's growing interest in boosting PC graphics and performance with DirectX 12 forced the Fable Legends creators to adjust to yet another technological advancement. The publisher's predilection for showcasing DirectX 12 with Legends demos heightened the pressure too. Reportedly, these types of mid-production additions at least partly contributed to the protracted development cycle. And yet, such corporate-level decisions hardly represented the worst offenses committed against the brand's final hurrah under Lionhead's stewardship.
Thanks. Fable was the first game I ever worked on the original Xbox. So I have a ton of excitement about the work that Lionhead's doing to create the new iteration of the franchise. Lionhead Studios is creating...
The Fable Legends reveal took audiences by surprise during Gamescom 2013, due in no small part to the fact that it wasn't the coveted Fable 4. Set amid Albion's Age of Heroes, about 400 years ahead of the first game's events, Legends promised a 4-player cooperative adventure with an asymmetrical multiplayer bent. Fans were intrigued from the outset, albeit skeptical of the integrated cloud functionality that necessitated online-only access. Skepticism ballooned as more information trickled out. Speaking with IGN in the months following the announcement, creative director David Eckelberry insisted the new multiplayer focus wouldn't completely overshadow Fable's usual storytelling element. He went on to tease the game's episodic content model, saying players should expect the experience to unfold in terms of seasons and content, such that its launch would mark Season 1 with new quests and storylines releasing piecemeal as DLC. According to Eckelberry, Lionhead built Legends to adapt and evolve over the course of several years. Eckelberry's comments stopped short of specifying long-term intentions, leaving series faithful to guess at what the studio had in store. Some eagerly awaited additional information, imagining Fable as an MMO light akin to Diablo 3. Meanwhile, more skeptical members of the community remained unconvinced that Legends deserved the Fable branding. This thinking persisted well past the E3 2014 gameplay reveal. Critics who went hands-on with the game shared their uncertainties as well. An IGN reporter wrote of enjoying the villain role, but felt the playable hero characters were less inspired. All in all, Legends provided standard dungeon crawling fare, yet did nothing to play on the franchise's distinct strengths. Even the gorgeous setting of Albion wasted Unreal Engine 4's raw power on compartmentalized dungeon designs. And it didn't help that Eckelberry advised a visit to the Legends website when asked about character backstories, implying such details wouldn't be communicated in-game and thus heightening concerns that Lionhead's latest was Fable in name alone. Select players were able to judge the action for themselves when a closed beta test went live in October 2014. Yet, the game remained shrouded in mystery in some respects, with Microsoft finally lifting the veil on its games as a service model in February 2015. The publisher reportedly baked the free-to-play strategy into development very early on, but the public-facing reason for the decision prioritized making the game available to as many players as possible. It was expected that availability across PC and Xbox One would arrive by the end of 2015. Instead, that December brought news of the open beta's postponement to 2016. An official statement from Lionhead claimed that while the game progressed nicely, the delay came as a result of the developers believing they could make it even better. Unfortunately, they never got the opportunity to guide Fable Legends to its fullest potential.
Sadly, this week is starting off on the wrong foot. Fable Legends and Project Knoxville have been canned, and Microsoft is possibly closing Fable developer Lionhead Studios and officially shuttering Press Play Studios. On the big shakeup, Microsoft said, "We have nothing but heartfelt thanks for the members of Lionhead and Press Play."
On March 7, 2016, Microsoft announced the cancellation of Fable Legends and the imminent closure of Lionhead. The official Xbox Wire statement from Microsoft Studios Europe, which also publicized the closure of Project Knoxville developer Press Play Studios, said the changes would allow the gaming division to focus its investment and development on the games and franchises that fans found most exciting. The unexpected news left the affected companies reeling. Lionhead staff, in particular, had no idea why everything fell apart so suddenly. Yet former employees who spoke with Eurogamer anonymously pointed out a few possible motivating factors behind Fable Legends' failure. One source placed the blame on mismanagement, claiming those involved with the day-to-day knew full well that Legends lacked both a fun factor and quintessential free-to-play features. Others argued the fault lay at the feet of Microsoft's free-to-play mandate, especially since core gamers distrusted the model and felt burned in the past by microtransactions. Worse still, the publisher had overfunded the project. One of Lionhead's ex-higher-ups estimated the budget sat in the $75 million range, far too costly of an investment in the free-to-play scene. Similar service games were often made cheaply and released in an early state, then iterated on while simultaneously expanding the player base. On the contrary, Microsoft pictured Fable Legends as a flagship title, aimed at being bigger and more polished at release. From the outside looking in, it flew too close to the sun. In addition, those in the know maintain that most developers harbored little in the way of love for Fable Legends. Like the user base, Lionhead employees would have preferred Microsoft's investment in Fable 4. Sour feelings didn't prevent a small group of Legends alum from trying to salvage the multiplayer endeavor, though. After production ceased, core crew members banded together for Project Phoenix, an attempt at completing and shipping Fable Legends under a new studio banner that licensed the IP from Microsoft. The hope was that Project Phoenix would safeguard numerous jobs and revive Lionhead's final Fable adventure. Thanks to interest from 2 Chinese companies, the plan nearly became reality. Negotiations lasted for too long, though. By the time former developers outside of the core team caught wind of Project Phoenix, most had already landed on their feet elsewhere. One person explained that while Microsoft supported the idea, those involved simply ran out of time. And perhaps Fable Legends' failings can be best illustrated by the notion of bad timing. Announced during a fragile period for Xbox when Xbox One's marketing blunders were still making waves, a Fable-themed live service hardly stood a chance. The premise practically oozed potential, but Microsoft's supposed technology-driven mandate and overly bullish live service approach seemingly left little room for the charm of Fable to shine through. A glimmer of hope peeks over the horizon, however. Microsoft has handed over the keys to the kingdom, throwing its weight behind a brand new Fable from Forza Horizon studio Playground Games. Xbox marketing boss Aaron Greenberg called the Playground-developed title a fresh start, promising fans a role-playing game through and through. While a traditional Fable, if done right, could inject the beleaguered IP with a fresh burst of energy, it's a shame that Lionhead's own vision for a fresh start was dismissed in favor of an online-focused experiment that never made it beyond the beta phase. Thank you for watching. We'd like to take this time to thank, by name, the generous patrons who have pledged to our Hall of Fame reward tier: Alex Moretti, and those currently subscribed to our producer reward tier: Brock Piviroto, Darirap Sigurdsson, GetWrecked.com, Jonathan, Kira May, Landy K. Hayes, Mario Herrera, Milkshake. If you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing to our channel and backing us on Patreon.